All right. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our continuing series of Unleash WD webinars. We at Unleash WD, we're committed to bringing critical and advanced thinking to distributors and our channel partners. And today, we're focused on the topic bringing your distribution business into the digital age. How are distributors using technology to create their future? At Unleash, we're committed, along with our sponsor NetSuite, we're committed to advancing the innovation discussion throughout the entire distribution industry and our individual businesses. And I think today's topic is very, very timely. There is a very interesting book out right now by the name of Digital Disruption. The author is James McQuivey, who's the vice president and principal analyst at Forrester Research and the leading analyst who's tracking the development of digital disruption. In this book, Unleashing the Next Wave of Innovation, Digital Disruption, Unleashing the Next Wave of Innovation. Take a look what he says. He says, you always knew digital was going to change things, but you didn't realize how close to home it would hit. In every industry, digital competitors are taking advantage of new platforms, tools, and relationships to undercut rivals, get closer to customers, and disrupt the usual way of doing business. And that is more true in distribution throughout distribution than ever before. Just about 45 days ago, in late June, most of us online know Jack Kehoe. He wrote a blog article on TED Magazine's website where he reported that Google is joining Amazon Supply in the business-to-business marketplace. And he began to discuss some of the ramifications to distributors and our supply chain partners. In early July, we held a webinar titled Preparing for Google's Entry into Distribution to discuss how this digital disruption is impacting our businesses. Well, the story continues because just late last week, Thursday of last week, Jack goes on to report that Google is expanding into the business space and that it's begun. In addition to the electronic offerings and the electrical components on its beta site, Google Shopping for Suppliers has added a category called mechanical components that include power transmission components, fluid power, and hose-related items. Again, they're expanding. It's begun. And as Jack has reported, this expansion really does indicate that Google intends to be a major player in your business. They intend to be a major player in the business-to-business sector and a key competitor to distributors as well as Amazon Supply. So, as I said, at Unleash, we believe that there is a need for advancing the innovation discussion throughout distribution. And with the likes of Amazon and Google bringing technology in the distribution industry, I really believe we need to be thinking differently and look to innovate at a faster rate than we're used to. We need to bring our distribution businesses into the digital age. And that's what today is all about. We are in an age of disruption. We are in the digital age. So if we understand the changing landscape just a little bit, I mean, it's important to hear this one quote that I think most of us on the webinar today are thinking about. I was sitting around the table with 12 CEOs recently, and one of the distributor CEOs said, with all the disruptive and constant pressures from all directions, how do we create a sustainable and a relevant business? Preparing for the digital age. That's what today is about. Again, most of you know that at Unleash, we have our innovation, the only innovation summit for distributors on October 29th and 30th of this year. One of the things you may or may not know, I'm really excited about that, is our opening storyteller on day 2 is the former NATO, newly retired, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, Admiral James Stavridis. The U.S. News and World Report said it's not hard to appreciate why the New York Times labeled recently retired Admiral James Stavridis a Renaissance admiral. Labels like innovator and thought leader may be overused, but Stavridis lives up to the hype. Well, why do I introduce Admiral Stavridis to you right now? On Thursday of last week, here's an article that Admiral Stavridis published. It's titled Disruptive Force or Force Multiplier. And he wrote this he wrote this when he found himself thinking about the impact of digital disruption and its impact not on distribution, but digital disruption's impact on foreign policy and diplomacy. He boldly asked in the title, is digital disruption a disruptive force or a force multiplier? Well, as we all know, if we ignore this wave of digital technologies, it will be a disruptive force. But if we understand the opportunities and are prepared to evolve our businesses, the digital age represents a strong and a sustainable future for our distribution businesses. So let's meet our force multipliers of today who are going to help us think through bringing our distribution businesses into the digital age. We have three force multipliers, including in addition to myself. And going around the horn, let's just take a look at them. We've got Steve Spitzer, who is the co-founder of Monterey Lighting. And I want to tell you the story we're going to hear from Steve is going to inspire us all to really look at what technology and the digital age can bring to us. Monterey Lighting is a value-added distributor of lighting and electrical products, and they founded it in 2005. Steve has spent 20 years in the enterprise software business. During his career in the software business, he held various executive titles with venture-backed companies, startups, and publicly traded companies as well. Hey, Steve, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Good morning.
Yeah, how are you today, bud?
Doing good, doing good.
Awesome. Really appreciate you being here and look forward to your insight. Thanks, man. Hey, we also have David Nettemeyer, who is currently the Digital Strategies Manager at Valen Corporation, where he works on developing and shaping technology to help create a seamless environment for employees, customers, and suppliers. And he's currently creating and implementing the templates of creative technological disruptions at Valen. Wow. David, we're going to learn from you, man. Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, no doubt. Um, hey, and is that picture of you like 20 years old?
Close enough.
All right. Hey, really appreciate you being here. And then we got Ranga Bodla as well, who is the Director of Industry Marketing at NetSuite, a great sponsor of Unleash WD. And he has a focus on wholesale distribution, and Ranga sees companies succeeding, utilizing and bringing their distribution business into the digital age every single day. So, Ranga, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Dirk. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, me too. Me too. It's going to be great. Thank you so much. And I am Dirk Beveridge. I'm the founder of Unleash WD, and I hope to not only moderate this awesome panel, but to share with you some of the research of innovation and business model design that we have been looking into. So, guys, those of you joining us, I think what you're going to find is that this is not your typical webinar where each of these are going to have 20 minutes. What I plan to do is sit around the table with Steve and David and Ranga and have a conversation with them to learn from them and pull out their stories about bringing their distribution businesses into the digital age. So let's get started, if you don't mind. Let's jump right in. So Steve and David and Ranga, the first question that I'd like to ask that, we throw out there the term digital age, right? I'm just curious, from your guys' perspective, when you hear the term digital age, what does that mean to you and your distribution business?
Well, I'll jump in. This is Steve.
Please.
I mean, it has a broad implications. I guess what it, probably most means to me is really trying to automate the supply chain. As a distributor, we obviously rely heavily on our manufacturer partners and trying to get product out to our customers. And, when I think of this term, I think of trying to get as much automation from our manufacturers down to the transaction level, down to our customers as possible, and trying to get as much of that to operate with as little human intervention as possible.
Cool. Thank you, Stephen. Just out of curiosity, what's the driving force of that? Is it cost reduction? This automation? Is it customer satisfaction? Or are there other driving forces? What you're really looking to drive this automation of the supply chain?
Well, cost is definitely a big factor. I
Yep.
mean, we're in a business with decreasing margins, and so we have to continually look at ways to take cost out of the equation, while at the same time we have, increasing pressures from our customers to deliver information at a faster pace and to deliver it in new forms of media. So people want their delivery schedules on their iPhones, and they want to access information on their iPads, and being able to provide that information to them cost effectively is a big challenge.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt. Appreciate that. David, how about yourself, man? When you think about the term digital age, what does that mean to you in your business over at Valen?
Well, looking at it as a more broader perspective than getting into the fine points that Steve was getting into,
Yeah.
we see it as the shifting tides of technological waves that are kind of coming at us. And we're looking at what opportunities we can really gain from technology and how we integrate it into our whole entire systems, and play off of those. And it's looking at connections that we're doing through connecting our employees and connecting our external side to our customers and our suppliers, and opening up a lot of collaboration, how we really drive that collaboration, especially internally. We see it as this way of, if you look at collaboration in terms of our internal structure, and then you push that out to our external side, we think that focusing on the employees and how we connect together and create a seamless environment will really help push out and support our customers better. So we're really looking at that internal side of technology and integrating things. But first we saw the uncertainty that comes with the new technology that's coming into play, especially in the distribution world. And we're kind of doing measurement points of looking at our processes across of how we work on certain things within the corporation, and how we
Yeah.
can find clarity in these processes and really develop them out.
Wow, great insight. So, as you said, Steve brings, a perspective of automating that supply chain, if you will, and then you're got some insights relative to bringing that the technology opportunities internally to help, the organization break down silos and collaborate better and the like. So it's going to be cool to listen to you both as we go on here. Ranga, how about you represent a technology company in NetSuite. When you and or NetSuite think about the digital age, what goes through your mind, bud?
So I actually think it's interesting, Dirk. My friends and I jokingly laugh, and we kind of we talk about the internet. We always make the joke, "Oh, this internet thing, I think it's going to be big," and we obviously jokingly say that, but
Right.
I do think there's a perspective. If you look just not even 10 years ago, I think there was still a perspective. Yeah, this is a fad. This is not. This
Yep.
is.
Yep.
It's interesting, right? But it's a fad, and it'll pass like many other things. And I think what you're seeing, and I would say probably in the last 2 to 3 years in particular, you're really starting to see a shift where it's not just a transformation of the technology that supports these businesses. It's the technology that people are using on the shop floor, in the warehouse. It's the technology. Steve talked about automating the supply chain, automating those relationships with the manufacturing partners. I think what's interesting, and this is what we see in particular, is 15 years ago, it was the largest companies in the world that had really a global footprint and a global supply chain.
Yeah.
And now you got two guys, and that have a great idea, and they go and source and create create a product, and they start to source it globally. They start to distribute it somewhere else. I mean, it's a very different world in that perspective. And so from our perspective, it's like, how do you enable those two guys, for example? They want to be able to compete with the Grangers and the Amazons
Yeah.
and the of the world. And how do they do that? And how do you kind of level the playing field and making sure that if you get global supply chain, that it works.
Yeah, I love it. I can hear the excitement now that you've realized that this internet thing is going to be a big thing. I can hear the excitement in your voice about it, Ranga. Um, but it's really interesting what you're saying. You use the word shift, and one of the uh, books that I'm reading right now that is just blowing my mind is called Entering the Shift Age. And it's a very provocative book by this futurist, David uh, Holy. And you see, it's called Entering the Shift Age. He's got me thinking hard about macro trends such as the flow to the individual, he calls it. And Ranga, that's exactly what you talked about. In the past, we thought technology was for the corporation, but now the technology is getting down to the floor and the individual technology, the iPhone so there's this flow to the individual. The accelerating electronic connectedness, where these two individuals can build a business and compete against Grainger and the like. He talks about the need, the collapse of legacy thinking. Everything that we've have believed in the past is beginning to collapse when you think about technology, and how the concept of place has been changed forever. So let's just expand upon this a little bit more. You started it for us, Ranga, but so on a business to business perspective, David, Steve, Ranga, what do you guys see as some of the fundamental shifts that you're seeing in the business landscape that has really caused Monterey Lighting and Valen and Ranga, other businesses, to really focus on digital solutions? Some of those fundamental shifts. I'd love your thoughts, Steve and David, and then Ranga.
Well, probably the first one is really the removal of geographic boundaries.
Yeah.
Our business used to be a business that we primarily serve customers within 50, 75-mile radius. But with the internet and with the digital age, we now serve customers all over the country and possibly expanding to international marketplaces as well. So the kind of the brick and mortar used to have to be able to go see your customer and deliver products to them is broken down, and we now do business with people all over the country because they can access us, find us, and purchase from us pretty easily.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the key ones.
Cool. And Steve, tell me if I'm thinking right. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, at first the reaction, knowing that the removal of geographic boundaries. Hell, if I've had a business and I've grown this business through 1, 2, or 3 generations, and I've been servicing that 75-mile radius, and we've developed great relationships and a darn good business and even a good living for me and my family and the next generation and the like. But then all of a sudden, this removal of geographical boundaries, where individuals from across the country are coming in and selling to my customers. At first, you could look at that as a negative, as oh my God, here comes a force. It didn't used to be that way. But what I hear you saying is, let's turn that around, and it's a tremendous opportunity if we understand the possibilities of this technology and how business is going to be done in the digital age.
Well, it's definitely two-sided, because there's people coming in that are from other parts of the country selling into my customer base, and we're trying to do the same thing by reaching out into other markets, geographic markets, and if you don't think it's happening in your customer base, it is, because I can see it by the customers I sell to out of the area that are some big prominent customers that I'm sure are well serviced by the local distributors, but for whatever reason, that purchasing agent, that project manager, that building engineer is looking for a product, he finds me and sources from me, and now I've got the opportunity to establish that relationship in locations that are a long ways from my physical presence.
You bet.
So it's definitely a threat, but it's also an opportunity.
You bet. Great insight. Thank you. David, how about yourself, man?
Well, I agree with what Steve's saying, really, with the change in how people can access information and really pushing it more of the countrywide and globally wide. People can get more of your information a lot easier, so it's a lot easier to do business with people in general throughout the world. And I think a major shift that we're seeing is in the e-commerce side, especially for B2B. It's growing rapidly, and the web has replaced the salesperson as the primary tool to disseminate information. And if you think about how the traditional sales model has been throughout for the distribution companies, it's really changing and evolving. And there was a article that came out about 2 months ago from the NAW, and they're saying suppliers are not ready for Generation Y purchasers. And it's talking about how this whole shift in the generation is causing a disruption in how we handle information orders that are coming in from the different avenues, and overall the shift that we're having in generation is growing massively. They're saying by 2014, 47% of the workforce will be millennials.
Right.
And that's a huge difference. And the way I see it is it's more than just a single generation shift, because it skipped over Generation X as the dominant force in terms of the workforce within there. So it's two generation gaps that have come through, and that's two cycles, two generations of technology that have come and replaced in the business world. And I think that's extremely important to realize that how do you capture this new audience that's coming in that has grown up with technology and has been integrated throughout their lives, and that is not so much focused on the sales guy relatively compared to getting information on their own. And one of the questions that I posed for Valen was when I was doing a presentation for them, was talking about YouTube and how we can connect through YouTube and learn a lot of information on our own. For example, replacing a garbage disposal or replacing brakes or your oil in your car, or doing some home improvements and fixing countertops. This information is readily available to all of us at our fingertips if we just go out and reach for it and look for it ourselves. We don't need that traditional model where having a sales guy come to us and try to push the sales that we had before, because the internet has really opened that up. So I think e-commerce is going to continue to be huge, especially for the B2B play, and it's going to continue to grow, and the people that take advantage of that early on, it's going to be huge for them, especially since they see that a lot of suppliers are not ready for it. So a lot of people are behind the curve in terms of that. So the first movers and the first players that are going to have a major advantage of how they connect to the outside world and connect to this new generation that's coming into the workforce.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Great.
I think what David says is really, really true. I mean, in our business, our customer is, the profile of our customer is probably a 40 to 50-year-old male that's an electrician or a building engineer or a tradesman like that. And while that individual is, they still like to contact their salesman, they still like to get the person on the phone and have a discussion about what they're ordering or buying. Primarily, that shift's going to happen pretty soon, because that next generation that's coming up, that's not going to be their primary method of interfacing. Their method's going to be online. It's going to be through their phone or their tablet, and their preferred method of interface is going to be different than the generation that we're servicing today. And so, when that shift occurs, I don't know, but when it happens, I think it's going to happen pretty quick.
So the question that I've got, and for all three of you on that is, I love the profile that you just painted, Steve. The 45 to 50-year-old tradesmen, they still want the sales rep, but the next generation, that shift is going to happen. But I'm thinking about cost, and I'm thinking about expenditures, and I'm thinking about changing business models and the like. How are you guys balancing the need to service that 45 and 50-year-old, but at the same time building out this platform for where you see it coming? Because I can see that being a hurdle for a lot of organizations that are managing for today, which we have to do, and then it's hard to make that leap to say we also need to be investing in the future because this shift is coming. Any insights on that, guys?
That's a good question, and it's tough. As
Yeah.
a small company, it's definitely a challenge, because you see what Google's doing, you see what Amazon's doing, and their efficiencies are 500 times what ours are. Yet we look at it and say we got to be in the game, because if we're not in the game,
Yep.
it could put us out of the game. And being able to make those investments to move ourselves forward it's difficult, but we view it kind of as a requirement.
Love it. Hey, Ranga, how about from your perspective? Any insights on that? Balancing that today and tomorrow?
Yeah, I was actually going to comment. I agree with both what Steve and with what David are saying. The geographic boundaries, the e-commerce side of it, and there's some discussion about the fact margins are not going up, right? There's continued margin pressure, and I actually look at it as kind of twofold. I see, and obviously NetSuite being a technology provider, we're biased in this regard, but I mean it is what it is. I look at the cloud and what we're doing with organizations where they're outsourcing the technology infrastructure, and they're not outsourcing what makes them a unique company. They're outsourcing the stuff that's boring. Yeah. They're outsourcing hardware. They're outsourcing backups. They're outsourcing the stuff that is not the interesting part of their businesses, and using that renewed the time and the energy that they have then to be able to focus on forward-looking things like e-commerce. And David and Steve have both talked about e-commerce and that changing on the B2B side, and I think Steve's right on, right, which is that shift's happening, but is it tomorrow? Is it 2014? Is it 2015? It's not quite clear, but I almost look at it, I kind of compare it to the stock market. When they talk about, it's hard to time the stock market, right? You don't know when that rally is going to happen, and it could, if you try to get in too late to the bull market, if it's already happened, then you've missed most of those gains. And I think the same analogy is very relevant here, which is that market is definitely shifting. I know David talked about that stat of 47%, of the workforce by 2014 is going to be millennials. The customers of today are not going to be pushing, companies to go and implement this technology. And so it becomes a question. They're not the ones that are going to be driving a company to go and put this in place. So you either have it, you either put it in place, or people are going to go and find it somewhere else. And I think if you put that infrastructure in place now, you learn it now, and are building that, it's definitely an opportunity. So that's my perspective on it.
No, I love it.
And just to add to what Ranga's saying, they're looking at the actual rates of people that are retiring from the baby boomers, and they're saying about 10,000 baby boomers are retiring per day, and about 10,000 millennials are turning 21 in a single day. So you really are constantly seeing that shift, and it's not exactly known, like they're both saying, of when it's going to happen, but it's going to be pretty quickly, and it's going to kind of hit you, pretty hard if you're not adapting to it and changing to these times. And they're also saying that through some surveys that the Capital Market is doing is 80% of B2B transactions, the customer finds the supplier. So we're really seeing a shift of how people can disseminate information, how they can obtain it themselves through the internet. So these shifts are coming, and they're coming pretty quickly. But you still have time. If you start adjusting now, at least you'll be ahead of the curve of most companies.
Wow, that's an amazing stat you just threw out there, David. I don't know if I've seen it before, that 80% of business-to-business customers find the supplier. And, that does suggest that the shift that the three of you are talking about, it's not going to be a future thing. It is happening right now. And, we talk about the 45 and 50-year-olds, and, I think even they are learning to do business differently out there. So great insights. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, Dirk, I just want to add one other point on this, and that is, we've talked to a few distributors that, they talk about the fact that, today they've got a couple of points of margin, and, they're not even sure if they're going to have that. And so they're really struggling with the concept of, I only have a couple points of margin today. How can I afford to put in place
right,
go ahead and spend money to go and put in an e-commerce platform, or put in a new system, to really set me up, for that future growth when I'm only getting that 1 or 2 points of margin. And I kind of ask the question back, which is, how can you afford not to? And I think that's a bigger question, is it's the price of doing nothing is greater than the price of doing something. And I think that's I think an important point that I do think we see from our customers that is huge.
Ranga, I agree, and I think this will relate. Maybe 6-7 months ago, I was having a conversation with the owner of a distributorship up in Canada, actually, and she had just bought the business because there were family issues, and she just bought the business from the family and her brother and the like, and she was almost wishing, as she looked at these challenges, right? Do we invest? Do we change? Or do we just try to ride this out, and try to find that balance of, do we invest, or how can you afford not to? And her comments to me, Ranga, were, she literally said to me, she said, "Dirk, I'm scared. I don't know what to do, and I don't know if I can do this." And I think what I'm hearing from Steve and David and you, Ranga, is that, you know what? This is doable. We can step back. We can look at these forces. We can look at our business, and we can develop the strategies and find the financial wherewithal from the current, from the current business, to bring our business into the digital age. But it really does require some thinking it through, I believe. So great insight, guys. Hey, Steve, can we go directly to Monterey Lighting, if you don't mind? You started to talk about this in terms of, the removal of geographical boundaries. um, and, uh, and then talking about e-commerce and the like. But I'd love to just hear the story. Can you give us maybe a before and after story of how Monterey Lighting, approached the marketplace and approached customers before e-commerce strategy, if you will, and moving towards these digital solutions, and how you're doing it now?
Yeah, sure. Um, and I guess I'll kind of preface it to kind of address the last point, which is, how does a small company make the investments they need to make in order to move forward? And we're doing it in a way that's really kind of what I'll say is self-funding, because the
Cool.
investments we make to do this, where the return on the incremental revenue we get is pretty quick. So although I won't say that our e-commerce strategy today is a highly profitable part of our business, it's funding the development of where we think we need to take the company, which is, in my view, is positive, because it's really the only way we can do it. But
Great insight.
so
Thank you. Yep.
I guess to describe the company, I guess we look like a fairly traditional lighting or electrical wholesale or distribution company. We've got an outside sales force that calls on a combination of either electrical contractors or commercial end users. Our business splits between project business and supply business. Supply would be, the kinds of materials that are just ordered on a monthly basis, primarily by larger commercial accounts to keep their businesses operating. And then our project business tends to be more of a new construction or tenant improvement type of work, where there's packages of products that are being bought for a specific job.
Yep.
And that business continues to be our primary focus. A few years ago, we started the entrance into, I guess, the e-commerce side of the world, and to a certain extent, it was done because, and this I'll put in a little bit of a commercial here for NetSuite, because of the platform. We are a NetSuite customer, and because of that, the nature of that platform, our ability to go into the e-commerce world was pretty simple, because we didn't have to invest in a new system, new technologies, new platform. It's just a kind of a built-in extension of the product that we were using. So we brought up our web store with a very modest investment as really just kind of a let's give it a shot and see what happens. And that was probably about 5 years ago. And what we started to find was sales were slow at first, but then they started to pick up, and we made more investments in it, and we got more sales, and we just continued to reinvest. And I guess what we learned over the time was it has become much more than just a transactional picking up incremental revenue every month from people buying things over the internet. What's been interesting about it has been some of the relationships of customers that we've been able to develop because they just found us. So, initially maybe they buy $200 or $300 worth of product over the internet, but you find out, gee, that's the University of Florida, or that's the Air Force Base in Texas, or that's, recently we had a pretty nice transaction from the CIA of all places. And so all of a sudden you have the ability to reach out and contact that customer, thank them for that order, find out what else they buy, and try to develop them not as a one-time transactional customer, but as a recurring customer. And that's kind of going to that issue of breaking down the geographic boundaries, is because there are, in our view, more and more folks that are either primarily purchasing folks, but it's also been small business owners as well who prefer to buy that way. They don't really require that somebody come by and bring them donuts and coffee in the morning, but they're just looking for an efficient way to source product. They're looking for good service. They're looking for competitive pricing. And when you can, kind of break down that physical barrier and all of a sudden develop accounts across the country, it's a positive way to grow your business. Now, the other, and I don't want to go on too long-winded, but the other positive side of once we built this platform is for some of our local customers, particularly our larger customers, that are interested in a B2B way to purchase their own, make their own purchases. So even though I have a salesman calling on a local account, that account would actually rather have their catalog online, would rather just be able to log in maybe at 7 o'clock at night. Our offices are closed, but they need to buy some products for the next day. They can go online, place that order. We've got the order the next morning and can ship it out. So because we've built that platform, we can actually provide now a greater level of service to our local customers that we have that direct relationship with.
Boy, Steve, great insight. Thank you. You know, as you were talking about, you know, that the removal of the geographical boundaries and much more than that incremental revenue, you talked about how it helped, you know, establish new relationships with customers. As you were talking, I drew three concentric circles on my paper here, and I'd love to see if I'm understanding. Um, my interpretation was that three things came together, and it's the intersection that really is driving, you know, that success. One is, you know, one circle is that e-commerce and the technology that enables that e-commerce. Number two, then I wrote down processes, right? And the processes that you put in place in your organization, the sales, the reviewing of the data, you know, the marketing, I guess. But those internal processes, you know, once people are coming to that e-commerce site, what happens? Was part of what I heard you say, I think. And then the third thing is I wrote down the human interaction, right? Once somebody comes in, if it's the CIA or if it's an Air Force base, what I hear you saying is we just don't accept that order as is. We certainly accept it in service, but you look at it as an opportunity, and there might be some form of human interaction to further that relationship. Is that right? I mean, did I?
Yeah, that's definitely accurate, and really it's that, you know, it's putting, for us at least, it's been adding the human interaction to those online customers that's been the most successful.
Cool.
You know, it's an opportunity for us to now develop a relationship that we wouldn't have had the opportunity to develop, and we do that through a human interaction, not just a, you know, electronic commerce.
Cool. Great insight. Thank you, Steve. Ranga and Dave, did any of Steve's insights, you know, spark any thoughts on your end?
Yeah, absolutely. From my side, I agree with what Steve's saying and making the connections after the customer has really found them. I think that's really important. And we had an open discussion not too long ago down at a conference I was at, and we were talking about what percentage do you think your sales force actually sell? And I think the conglomerate of people were saying about 15 to 20% of the times spent on actually selling. And I was kind of sitting there saying, I think it's more around 5% to 10% of customers. And they asked me, you know, how do you justify that? And I kind of threw back at them, I don't believe servicing is a form of selling. So a customer that's coming back and doing repeat business with you consistently and you calling them up, oh, hey, do you need another product again, is not selling something. It's the customer's already there. It's already working with you. Now, making those connections that Steve's talking about afterwards, you know, that's more of the selling side because the customer found you. They do, you know, $300, $400 worth of sales for you, and then you develop a kind of connection with them afterwards with your sales force, and you can talk with them and push out and grow sales from there. So there's that kind of organic growth coming through instead of having a consistent servicing solution side. So I think it's really important to try to adjust that. And how do you provide the processes and the information that we get to your sales force that you can push those out and develop those strategies around that? And I believe a lot of that comes with the connectivity of, you know, our tools and our integration for our technology, and then making sure that we're maintaining good data so that we can push that information out to our group.
Yeah, love it, guys. I don't hear that often talked about. You know, that it's not that it has to go beyond the technology. We got to, you know, really think through the business processes, and then also the that human side and the integration. I don't think I hear that talked about a lot. So I really appreciate your guys' insight on that. Thank you.
And Dirk, I'll just add one other piece to that. You talked about this distributor that was scared.
Yeah.
And I think what Steve says is actually is probably the most relevant point to respond to that, which is, and David as well, which is it's not just about deploying e-commerce as a technology to get new revenue, and that, suddenly you have 90% of your revenue that's coming from direct interaction, and then suddenly now all this new stuff comes out through the web. I think the important thing that both David and Steve have hit upon is, at the end of the day, you're still maintaining relationships. You're still creating relationships, and you're still building. You still have to sell, as David said. And I think that's the important thing, is looking at it as an enabler. So the folks that want to buy that way, you're enabling them to buy that way, but then you're increasing your reach. And I think that's an important thing that gets missed, is it's not just about servicing a set of customers. My customers don't buy that way. So there is that. So maybe, your customers don't buy that way today, but what about the customers that you don't have today and that you want to get to? And then as those customers retire, or as they shift out of the market, and you want to reach those folks that are used to buying that way, you want to be there, because they're not gonna they're not gonna wait. They'll just go somewhere else, because it's just a different URL. It's easy to go somewhere else.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Great point. So it's an enabler, and it's we still need that human interaction, those processes to drive those relationships, and the like. So great stuff. Thanks, guys. Steve, thanks for setting the stage for that. Really appreciate it, man.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, David, let's jump to you for a second. I love your story. I think the first time you and I met was at last year's Unleash summit here in Chicago, and I think at that time your title was something like sales analyst or something like that. And I know over the last several months you went to your management team and said that the company needs to create a new position titled Manager of Digital Strategies. Let me just do I understand that right? Is that kind of how it happened?
Yeah, that's close to it. Very close to it.
All right.
It was a point we were making. I started doing a lot of the data crunching and the big numbers, and I was coming through and looking through our entire software and trying to pull out the information and the data and the numbers, and it was painstakingly hard to get some information that was really good for us to kind of push out information to the sales force. We had so much acquisitions over the past few years that a lot of data dumping happened, and we weren't managing things, and the different branches that we started growing across the West Coast kind of did processes in their own way. And it became difficult to manage that and really determine, well, one person's entering information this way, one person's entering information this way. So how do I really determine what's good data, what's bad data? And it became increasingly difficult to manage, not only within our ERP system, but our CRM system. And then we had a disconnection between the two of them, so the databases weren't talking. So we'd have multiple customers that were the same customer in both systems. And it just became really difficult to service both sides of that and really understand how we can make the connection to our customers based off of information that you don't know if it's good or bad. So we started to decide that, well, it's probably a good idea to connect our platforms so our databases are talking to one another, so we have the same information instead of just kind of saying, well, here's one database and here's the second database. Go ahead and dig through the information. Hopefully you can pull something good out of it. So I think it was a lot of frustration that built up from just all the acquisitions and a lot of the data dumping and just multiple processes that weren't unified. And I think that's where the role kind of said, well, first we need to discern how we determine what information that we're using, what information we're entering in the systems, and controlling that processes. But not only controlling the processes, but determining who's responsible for that and maintaining those is extremely important, because you can spend, a couple months cleaning up, or even a year, depending on how dirty your database is, cleaning it up. And then if you don't have the responsibility and the management and the proper processes in place beforehand, 6 months later, the database is going to be just as dirty, and you have to go back and re-clean the whole thing. So, we decided that you have to have a maintaining management position over the data and over the information you're trying to push out to your force. And then also someone that's coming in and really defining the processes with your group. And that's where the whole collaboration came from, because I think we have a disconnect, a lot of companies do overall, with, upper management and the actual day-to-day processes that the individuals do. So that's where we said, well, we need platforms that we can connect everyone across our different branches and our different departments internally also, so that they can communicate. We can have training programs that we push out on an easier basis. We can have documents that cite why people are doing certain things. They can have open communication discussion. So that's where that whole concept came from, to really fix the internal structure through technology, so that we could develop the processes in place for our daily activities, that we're entering the proper information, come back, really crunch those numbers, and give out meaningful information to our sales force, to our takers, to all the different departments that it's really affecting, and ensuring that we're kind of speaking as one unit across all different platforms and all different branches throughout our sales force.
Wow, what a cool vision, David. And if you don't mind, I believe, we've talked on here about the millennials um, and Generation Y and all that type of stuff. My understanding is that you are a millennial. Is that right?
That's correct.
All
Yes.
right. So go ahead. I'm sorry, Dave.
Oh, I'm 25 years old.
25 years old. So
kind of raised up in the generation of technology. So
yeah. So but let me ask you. I mean, so here you are, a 25-year-old that decided that a new position needed to be created. And here are people in the business that have been around for 20, 30 years or more. I'm just curious. The word courage isn't used a lot, but that takes some courage to say, you know what, we need to do things differently. And I know I'm 25, but I've got some solid ideas. I'm just curious, how did management react? Did they rubber stamp your idea? Um, I, I'm just curious.
Well, they had a meeting the next day. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
They sat and talked in private for a while, and after the end of the day, I got pulled in the office, and
Oh
it was
no.
pretty much. Yeah, I was a little nervous at first,
Yeah.
walking in there, a little bit of sweat coming out. But,
Your Jerry Maguire moment.
And they essentially told me, well, you make some good points. We've been in this industry. We've done things from the sales perspectives and traditional models for so long. We don't know the technology as well as your generation is coming. We don't know how to, handle it relatively compared to the younger generation, and how do we capture that? And I think one of the concepts was, how do you make distribution sexy again? My generation, you look at people that graduate, and they've done multiple surveys from the colleges, and what does everyone want to do? They want to work for Google. They want to work for Apple. They want to work for these big names or these tech companies and Facebook and so forth, because they have all these nice perks and so forth. But, it's how do you take this technology that's coming out and reinvent it within your corporation, so that you're having this type of collaboration, open communication amongst them? And how do you really develop that and push that forward? And I think, the management saw that as, we're changing. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
And we have to change to be able to compete with these top names. With Amazon coming into the distribution world and Google now coming into the distribution world, they're trying to chew away, a lot of profits from people. And the big players that Amazon's really going for is Grainger. And you look at Google, and they're more on the electrical side. You could say they're trying to attack Home Depot and so forth, and those types of big names. But soon, if they keep growing and they keep expanding, they have these successes, it's not going to stop. They're going to keep chewing up as much as they can, as long as they're making that profit.
Yeah.
So they can come in and attack us at any time, really. So it's really trying to add the emphasis of connecting things within the internal side, and changing from what we said was the traditional analog channels to the new digital channels.
So David,
And really
if you don't mind, sorry, let me interrupt, because I love that. And I was just in a meeting with 30 different distributors a week ago today, and one of the individuals, one of the owners of the business, talked about, how do we get these millennials to run to our business, because distribution isn't sexy. And here you are in the middle of Silicon Valley competing against the Googles of the world, and you better make your business sexy again to get that. And then, so I know that you talked about this, you got to use technology to make that business effective and sustainable for the future, and attract quality talent. And I know you've got this transitioning strategy. I put the slide up on the screen. You're moving from analog channels to digital channels. For the interest of time, we've only got about 11 minutes left, David, but can you just give us a snapshot picture of what you guys are thinking about? And then Steve and Ranga, I'd love your guys' input as to what David is saying Valin is doing here, with this moving their strategy from analog channels to digital channels. So David, can you just give us a broad brush picture of this chart of what you guys are looking to do with your strategy here?
Yeah, not a problem. So we're really looking at, like I said at the beginning, we look at our ERP system, our CRM system, and connecting things so that we have single databases that are talking in points like that. So that's where we're looking at different connection points for our data and how we pull that out and really connect that with our internal employees. And then also it's looking at like social media and types of dashboards and snapshots that we can really push this information out. So it's a lot of content development. So we're looking at how do we develop our content so that we're really driving home the point of proper information and connections and collaboration. So it's a continual connection collaboration internally that we want to develop through the technologies, through our CRM platforms, through a social media type platform that's all internal.
Cool.
Developing these types of multi-channels and expanding off of that and really driving that information so that we can have social selling. So it's not just e-commerce, they're coming in, purchasing from us, there's no connections. We want to have the information available at the fingertips in real time to our sales force, to our CSRs, to our inside sales force and so forth, so that they can really connect and relate to our customer base and with really good information that's pumped out to the system that they're entering through defined processes and defined connections and defined responsibility of who's all managing that.
Yeah, love it, man. And I love how you guys have thought it through and are really thinking through this transition that needs to take place. Stephen Ranga, as you listen to David and some of the strategies of Valen, any thoughts or questions going through your mind there, guys?
Well, yeah, definitely a few. I think, one of the things is, for one of our challenges definitely in our business is attracting the younger kind of bright talent because, the skill sets that guys like David have are different than the older generations, and it just comes a lot more natural. My sister is a teacher, and she coined a phrase. She said the younger generation are digital natives, and we're all digital immigrants. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. And so, while we try and push things forward in a digital world, we don't necessarily grasp things as fast and can't have as good a vision as some of the younger generation. But in our business, attracting kind of the best and the brightest of that generation isn't that easy because they do want to go work for the Googles and the Apples and the more glamorous places. And so it's definitely a challenge. I think, what David's laid out here seems to make a whole lot of sense. And it is, what's difficult is there isn't just one button you can push. You can't just say, well, I'm going to do B2B e-commerce and now I got my strategy. It's a whole series of things that have to be brought together. And you really do need somebody in the company that can focus on that completely and own that whole strategy and then get the right pieces lined up to execute. It doesn't mean, at least in my view, it doesn't mean that every person or every piece of the strategy has to be executed internally. There's a lot of good firms that you can outsource stuff to. But I think you do have to have somebody that has an overriding responsibility and can put all the pieces in place, because there are a lot of pieces that have to go into place, and it's changing constantly. I mean, it's a fast-moving target.
You bet, Steve. Great insight. Thank you. It's a whole series of things that need to be done. Certainly not all inclusive. Some of the opportunities that we look at, what the digital age provides, 4 components, and I know there's more, right? But we can look at our physical web, right? And it used to be an online brochure, but now, as all 3 of you are talking about, with e-commerce and on-demand marketing and using it to create these relationships, there's digital opportunities there. The pervasiveness of data, right? Where we can now remember, and we have the ability to remember anything. And David, as you said, getting all of those databases together so that we can utilize the data in an appropriate way, so that, Steve, as you said, to really drive those relationships that will continue to build our business. And then the social influence, as you both are talking about. And then Brittany from K&M Electric, who's following us right now and is on the line, and she just tweeted out about the importance of social media and social influence and how digital opportunities can do that. And then digital sensors. I love how Cisco talks about the Internet of Everything. And today there are about 10 billion objects connected to the internet globally, and Cisco expects this to be 50 billion by 2020. And so all these devices and parts that we sell at Monterey and Valen, and all of those are going to be connected, if not tomorrow, in the future, to the internet. And it's going to, if we're on board, it's going to allow us to continue to work with our clients. But that said, Steve, I want to tie to what you just said. There's a whole series of things. So, Ranga, as we start to move towards the end here, I'd love your quick insights. As Steve just said, there's a lot to be done. Where the hell do we start, man? um, you know, we need a strategy. David's taken the umbrella and leading that strategy at Valen, and Steve said we need somebody to own it. But Ranga, do you have any thoughts, from all the implementations that you guys have done at NetSuite, helping distributors create relevancy today and in the future? Any quick thoughts as to where an organization should start to begin moving their distribution business into the digital age?
I think Steve and David have both talked a lot about kind of the challenges they faced and kind of how they've moved forward as organizations. And I think I'm not gonna suggest that it's a one size fits all answer for everybody. It's going to be different depending on what the particular scenario is.
Sure.
But I think both Steve and David made this point in their comments, which is there's not a silver bullet. It's not just, hey, suddenly implement B2B commerce in your
right.
And you've got it right. It comes back to what's your strategy. What's your strategy going to be in order to increase your reach as a company? And I think I think companies have to think offensively, not defensively, and thinking about it and if I can use that analogy, thinking about the perspective of what are we going to do as a company that's going to enable us to grow our revenue and grow our margins, not focusing on just what are we going to do to keep our existing market share. And I think that's when you shift the conversation that way. I think that's probably what I would say is thinking about what makes sense for your business. I know as Steve said, and I think it rings really true, which is you don't know when that shift's going to happen, but when that shift happens, you better be prepared to be there. At the same time, you got to be able to service your customers as they're buying today. And I think it's important to understand where your customers are today and how fast that's shifting. And it's different depending on if you're talking about people that are in lighting versus people that are in HVAC as an example.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important part of it. So I'm not going to say for everybody it needs to be, you should start on CRM, or you should start on getting your books in order, or you should start on e-commerce. I can say, the one thing I will say is that I do believe that having an e-commerce strategy is a critical part of success, and it's not something that companies should wait on, right? I think it's something that the shift is happening, and it's happening quickly. And I think the companies that are first movers are the ones that are going to be able to gain market share quickly.
Love it. Really appreciate it, guys. And we have run up against the clock, and I really appreciate it. And Ranga, we need that strategy, as you said. Let's think offensively and not defensively. A couple of just concluding thoughts on my end. If we're going to be successful in this digital age, right? I think it's a great concept to remember that, companies don't disrupt. Google isn't disrupting. Amazon's not. People do. It's a leadership decision, right? And so to your point, we've got to be on the offense rather than on the defense, because it's leadership that is going to drive us into the digital age, and not our companies per se. A second thought that I'm taking away from you all is, something that we believe in at Unleash is that it's important to have that leadership, that offensive mindset that says we need to reinvent our business before someone else does. Because as we started off this conversation an hour ago, others are coming into this business trying to reinvent how business to business is done. And so we're going to need to be that reinventors before somebody else is. And then what you guys have also shared with us is that technology is an enabler. It's an enabler to have us take a look at our business models, how we deliver, how we create, deliver, and capture value. And that formula is changing as we speak. So to our force multipliers that we've got with us, Steve, thank you so much for being here, man. We could spend another 3 hours with you. David, the same with you, and Ranga. To the three of you guys, thank you very, very much for your time. Great, great insights. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, last thing I'd like to thank is I'd like to thank the National Association of Wholesalers and ASA, the American Supply Association. They are great partners of Unleash WD, and they helped us get the word out for this as well as Hardy did. So thank you. And Ranga, to you and NetSuite, you guys are doing great things helping distributors create their future. And I really appreciate what you all are doing as well. We hope that you all enjoyed today. Got a lot out of it. I know I took a ton of notes. I hope that you'll also consider joining NetSuite and us at the second Unleash WD Innovation Summit, the only innovation summit for distributors in Chicago this October 29th and 30th. We have over 18 phenomenal storytellers. What they all have in common is innovation, and they're going to share with us new stories for distributors of reinventing their business, new business model design, leadership. How do we attract these millennials and the like? You can find all the details online, and we hope that you join us this October 29th and 30th to inspire change in your business while creating your future. So one more time, Steve, David, Ranga, thank you all. Thank you all for joining us. And everybody go out there and let's make it a great day. Thanks, everybody.